Joe Gustin here from Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Training Division, and my friend Matt Livingstone, Lieutenant with Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. And our special guest today on this month's Hangout is Joe Berry, retired from the FDNY. And we also have our regular panelist, Clark Lamping. So the topic is going to be operating above the fire, both knowingly and unknowingly. And before we begin, I want to give a shout out to Key. That's keyhose.com. If I looked out the window right now, I'd see the recruits dragging it around the pavement. If you want to test out any piece of equipment, especially hose, put it in your recruit training because it gets a lot of use. And with the hose, it gets a lot of ultraviolet abuse as well. So I can't speak enough about how kink resistant and durable Key hose is. Every one of their models, the Combat Ready, the Combat Sniper, and the True ID, all excellent hose. Don't go cheap on hose. It is truly your lifeline. So we're going to start off with introducing Joe Berry because he is our special guest. If you just tell a little bit about yourself, Joe, and then we're going to get into that topic of operating above a fire, one of the most dangerous positions a firefighter can be in, even more so when the firefighter is not aware that they are operating above a fire. So go ahead, Joe.
My name is Joseph Berry. I'm a retired lieutenant, ladder 42 in the Bronx. I spent just shy of 32 years in FDNY. I started my career in Engine 1 in Manhattan. Went across the Florida ladder 24 in 1974. I got promoted in 83 to lieutenant, went to the Bronx, worked in 73 Engine, which is the sister company of ladder 42. I worked there for 5.5 years. Then went across the Florida ladder 42 and spent the remaining of my time, which I retired 2002. And it's been a hell of an experience. I wouldn't trade for all the tea in China. What happens in this job, you learn so much, and you learn from other people teaching you, and then you learn from going to fires. And it was such a learning experience for me. I had the right people teaching me. When I was in one engine, I had a fellow from engine 290 who was lifted to one engine, and he took me under his wing and taught me how to put out fire. His favorite saying was, no matter how ferocious the fire would look, he would say, Joe, it's a walk in the park. And what he would do is coach you through the fire. Even though your knees might be shaking, you know, it's the first good fire you ever had, you would follow this man through hell. Unfortunately, he just passed away August 15th, pancreatic cancer. He was 82 years old. He lived in Philadelphia at the time. But anyway, after the fire department, 9/11 did a job on me, and did a job on all of us, I should say. We just had a memorial mass this 10th. We celebrate the 10th, not the 11th, because we had a house dedicated on the 10th, and the next day there was 16 people not there that were there on the 10th. Michael Judge said his last mass in our firehouse on the 10th. So that's a very resemblance date to us on September 10th. But every year when we go there, they read the names of all alumni members of the squad, Engine 73, ladder 42. The scary part is, you know, 3/4 of them. And that's the reality, you know. Eventually, I said to a friend of mine when I was doing the list, I go, well, what happens when I die? Who's going to take over the list? He said, don't worry about it. We'll put you on the list too. Anyway, that's about it. I worked for Homeland Security for about 5 years when I retired. And that was a learning experience. I felt I had something to offer with 9/11. And then I'm completely retired. I'm still involved with things in the fire service, but I do it as a hobby now. My wife always yells at me for getting involved with it, but I try to do it early in the morning when she's sleeping. So, but I'm working on something now about non-fireproof apartment houses, and I'm just about ready to write an article on them. I researched them for quite a bit. I wrote numerous articles for Firehouse magazine, and I wrote some articles for fire engineering. What Bill had mentioned the last time I was a guest was about outside-in fires, and I wrote 2 articles on that subject matter. And I've been investigating them since 2003, so I got quite a bit of years investigating outside-in fires. But that's enough for me, and I just want to get on reading about this fire, and it's been a great career with FDNY. And one thing I did learn, we learn every day in this job. You learn from the probie and then up. Just because the probie comes in a job doesn't think he doesn't know anything. What I found out over the years is a team concept. You have 5 guys with 5 guys looking out. If you're going to treat a fireman like a robot, then that's going to happen, come back and bite you in the butt. You don't want to tell him what to do all the time. You want him to be self-motivated and those extra pair of eyes looking around you. Just my thoughts.
Absolutely.
You ready to go on with the?
Ready to go, Joe. Let's examine
Okay.
this fire.
If you can't hear me or I'm broken up, I have issues with my throat, just let me know. This was Manhattan box, second alarm box 308. It happened on March 28, 1994. At 1936 hours is the box. It was a fatal fire for Captain John Drennan, Fireman Krista Seidenberg, and Fireman James Young. Seidenberg and Young were members of Engine 24. Captain Drennan was captain ladder 5. He was also a lieutenant in ladder 147 in Brooklyn, which is my neighborhood where I was brought up, a very busy truck company. He had 26 years on the job and a well-experienced fire officer. All references material from this fatal fire came from the Fire Department Safety Inspection Command Investigating Report, NIST Building and Fire Research Laboratory, and DC Jonas Division 7's newsletter. In some fatal fires, a series of spontaneous issues occur that lead to the final income. Some issues are already in place prior to the fire, such as renovations of buildings that change the geography of a building inside and out, delayed response due to traffic, a well-advanced fire, and the storage of flammables, hazardous materials that are not normally found in that particular occupancy. And the list goes on and on. All fatal fires, FDNY, as a result of line of duty injuries, are investigated by the Fire Safety Command. No stone is left unturned. Early on, the investigating team recognized the need to explain the behavior of this particular fire. Fire in one apartment of a residential building that could be controlled and extinguished by implementing standard operating procedures. However, during the initial stages of operation, the fire assumed an intensity and duration inconsistent with fires usually encountered in this type of structure. The information gathered is from one common goal. And the fellow had mentioned before about this. We never point blame. We find out what happened and how we're going to correct it. When you start putting blame on someone, everyone's going to clam up. You're not going to get any information out of a fireman. He's afraid that he might say something and someone will point a finger at him. So we do not blame. We're in a profession that is so unpredictable. Things change so rapidly. That's just the profession we're in. Like I said before, there's no consistency with firefighting. I'll give you a building size up. Pete, can you put on photo number 1? These pictures are not the greatest, but it gives you an idea of what we're dealing with here. The building in the center is the fire building. The building adjacent on the left side is 64. The building on the right side is number 60. These buildings were pre-Civil War era. Okay, they're very old buildings, and this is a very old part of Manhattan. Pete, put on photo number 3. That's it right there, Pete. Thank you. This is a breakdown of the interior of the building. So you have 3 apartments, first, second, third floor, and there's an apartment in the basement has a separate entrance. The interior stairs are open interior stairs that go to the top floor. On the top floor, there's a scuttle ladder that leads to the roof, and there's a skylight with wire glass directly over the interior stairs. The interesting factor here is the width of these stairs are 2 feet 7 inches from the banister to the wall. Very, very narrow stairs. Another thing that caused the hazard here, and I'll read it when I go through the report. On the second floor landing, there was a mattress and box spring being stored against the railing in the hallway. They had refinished the floors in the apartment on the second floor, and actually throughout the building at one time, but most recently the second floor apartment. So they put the mattress and box spring, storing it against the banister in the second floor. And then at the end of the second floor hallway to the third floor, they stored a table. Now, the width of that second floor hallway is 5 feet 10 inches wide by 19 feet long. You're talking about a very, very narrow hallway. Now you have a mattress and box spring skewered against the railing and a table at the end of the hallway. Okay, the building size up. It's post-Civil War 3-story MD, 20 by 46. One apartment per floor, approximately 900 square feet per apartment with the basement. Apartment as well. The basement apartment had a separate entrance. The top 3 floors were accessed by an open interior stairs. The top floor mentioned before had a scuttle ladder and a skylight above the stairwell. The fire apartment. Pete, could you put on photo 1A, please? That's it right there. Thank you, Pete. This is the aftermath of the fire. I'm sorry the pictures ain't the greatest, but you can see that
They're great, Joe. They're great.
Oh, okay. The amount of fire in this apartment was off the chart. I mean, everything was completely paralyzed, incinerated. Pete, can you put on 3A, please? That's the layout of the apartment. So you're coming in from the outside of the building, the stairs go up into the hallway. What they did in this apartment that's interesting, they made it 3 feet wider because the building was built, I said, post-war Civil War. Well, renovations occurred since then. So they decided to make the apartment larger. So what they did is they took 3 feet out of the hallway and put a wall. Now that hallway is even narrower than it was originally. With that in mind, they put steel butt doors throughout. The front door coming in, steel butt doors, all residents above with steel butt doors. The issue with steel butt doors is it's a very secure frame. Forcing those doors conventionally is a chore. So what they have now, we have the rabbit tool. We get a purchase with the Halligan, put the rabbit tool in. On the fire apartment above, there was 3 locks on the door. So you can imagine forcible entry with 3 locks on the door, and they're all healthy locks, how difficult it is to force that type of door. Anyway, the fire apartment, if you look here where the triangle is right there, that's where it originated. It originated above a stovetop. Apparently what happened was the occupied apartment had just recently moved in. They had boxes on the floor. They had whiskey liquor containers on the counter. They had on the floor a turpentine, gallon turpentine. And then on top of the stovetop, they put, the counter was also adjacent to the stovetop. So they figured it was either fully on the stove or partially on the stove. It doesn't really matter. They put the garbage up there. Why? Because the dog was getting into the garbage. And then they left the apartment. As I read the rest of this, it's going to flow a little better of the time element, which is very important. So the stripes are indicating where the fire was. If you look at the back of the apartment, it was clear as a bell back there. There was no char. There was a little smoke damage, but there was a lawn door separating that kitchen area from that back, which was somewhat of an office area. So that area is clear as a bell. Anyway, we'll get back to finish reading. The contents on the first floor were light residential furnishings on original refinished older type wide plank floors. 36-inch steel buck door was installed to provide access to the living area. The occupants just recently moved in and had belongings in boxes on the kitchen floor, 3 bottles of liquor on the kitchen counter, and a can of paint thinner on the floor. All wooden floors within the building were refinished within 2 to 3 days prior. Renovations, I mentioned before, the original interior partition separating the first floor hallway and the fire apartment was moved approximately 3 feet to enlarge the size of the apartment. Most of the old wooden lath and plaster was removed. New sheetrock, well insulated in the floor exterior walls, was installed. Energy efficient windows were installed, and the original 9 feet 3 ceiling was dropped to 8 feet 4. The only front entrance was a 36-inch wide door. The second floor had 2 entrances. What they did on the second floor, they removed that second entrance and closed up that door with sheetrock. Excuse me. The second floor door had 3 locks on it. In the hallway on the second floor, I mentioned before, there was a box spring and mattress near the front entrance door leaning against the banister. This storage of the mattress would prove to be a factor in this incident. There was also a table in the hallway near the stairway leading to the 3rd floor. The open interior stair from the 1st to the 2nd floor measured, I mentioned before, 2 feet 7 inches between the wall and the banister. The width of the 2nd floor, I mentioned before, was 5 feet 10 inches and the length of 19.4, with the ceiling height of 8 feet 10. The time of day. Approximately at 1825, the occupant of the 1st floor apartment, the fire apartment, apartments at 62 Watt Street, left her apartment, went to work. She left the plastic garbage bag on the stove in an attempt to keep the dog out of the garbage while she was at work. The pile of light from the stove heated the plastic and refuse on top of the stove. It began to pyrolyze and off gas. The fire started. At 1935, so we're talking over an hour and 10 minutes later, an occupant in the exposure, which was in 60 Watt Street, smelled smoke on the top floor. Dialed 911 and reported the smoke condition. At 1936 hours, Manhattan Fire Dispatcher transmitted box 308 for a telephone alarm reported for a smoke condition on the top floor of 60 Watt Street. This time of day was at the peak of rush hour. Watt Street is a main thoroughfare, as a feeder street for the Holland Tunnel. This complicated response and operation. Pete, put on photo 1B, please. This is the narrow hallway from the fire apartment, which would be on the left. And you can see the stairs going to the 2nd floor, how narrow they are. Pete, 1B2. Just look at the ceiling here. When they lost control of this door, the fire came out through the front door. The control man was just about to enter the hallway. It pushed him back into the street. The nozzle man was knocked on his back. 1C, please. These are the interior stairs going up to the 3rd floor from the 2nd floor. You can see the deep char in this hallway. The stairwell. Arriving out of assigned sequence, swapping personnel. The night tour, March 28th, 1994, started out in a routine fashion. The masks were checked, tools were being checked. Ladder 8 officer realized that he had some engine firefighters detailed to his unit. He contacted Battalion 2, and it was agreed to swap out personnel with Ladder 5 to equalize manpower. Ladder 8 proceeded to the quarters of Ladder 5 to perform the swap. Fireman Young was normally assigned to Engine 24, which shares a firehouse with Ladder 5. He was sent to Ladder 5. Fireman Monahan from Ladder 5 would be sent to Ladder 8 for the roof position. Captain Drennan, Ladder 5's forcible entry team now consisted of firefighter Young, the extinguishing cannon person, firefighter Seinenberg, the forcible entry person. Both firefighters were enginemen assigned to engine 24. At 1936 hours, box 308 was transmitted for a telephone alarm reporting a smoke condition on the top floor for 60 watts. Engine 24, engine 55, engine 7, ladder 5, ladder 8, battalion 2 were dispatched to the scene. At 1938, a second source reported smoke condition in 64 Watt Street, which would have been exposure 2. Erroneous report was 52 Watt Street, but that was corrected. FDNY units responded to the location, box 308. They had to navigate through heavy rush hour traffic. Ladder 8 was still at the quarters of engine 24 and ladder 5 when the box came in. Firefighter Young gave his ladder 8 roof radio to firefighter Monahan and told him, "You got the roof." At 1939 hours, ladder 8 arrived first due. Normally they would be second due. Ladder 8 could not make the left turn and enter Watt Street against traffic because the traffic was bumper to bumper. The firefighters dismounted their apparatus and they proceeded on foot, approximately 120 feet to reported address. There was an odor of fire in the air. Now, somebody would say, "Well, how's an odor of fire?" I know exactly what they mean. The odor of smoke is distinct. You can tell with smoke. But fire sometimes is distinct. You know I have a fire. It's either the plastic smell or the wood smell, but it's definitely a fire. So that's what he meant by that statement. There was an odor of fire in the air. Lieutenant of Ladder 8 approached the scene. He saw a light smoke coming from the first floor windows of 62 Watt Street. He radioed the chauffeur to transmit at 1075. 1075 is filling out the box with 3 and 2 rescue, and you get an extra chief coming in on a 1075. Excuse me. The time was 1940. Rescue 1 and Battalion 6 would be dispatched. Ladder 5, engine 55, engine 24, engine 7 arrived at 1940. Ladder 5's tiller apparatus was able to maneuver down the block and get in front of the fire building, and he laddered the roof of 64 Watt Street. Engine 55 took a hydrant on the corner of Varick and Watts, which is approximately 120 feet, which I mentioned before, from the fire building. Excuse me. Engine 7 took a hydrant on the corner of 6 and Watts. Engine 24 positioned their pumper behind engine 55. There was a hydrant on the fire opposite the fire building, but because of traffic, nobody could get in the block. But it was inaccessible due to traffic. Members of engine 55 tested the hydrant and started stretching engine 3/4 with a solid bore 15-16 controlling nozzle. Mentioned before, the fire building was 120 feet from the corner of Watts and Varick. Members of engine 7 came to assist in the hose stretch. Also assisting were members of engine 24. I'm just going to recount for a minute. Our engine companies now, they ride with 4 firefighters and an officer. The truck companies ride with 5 firefighters and an officer. Originally, the engines were 5. Now the engines are 4. Ladder 8 arrived first due and assumed the role of first due ladder company. The outside vent man of Ladder 8 entered 62 Watt Street, thinking that was an exposure because the call came in from 60 Watt Street initially. He saw smoke coming from the first floor apartment at 62 Watt Street. The OVM started forcing the first floor apartment door. He was assisted by Ladder 8's forcible entry team. The officer of Ladder 8 arrived at the first floor door, and he told the firefighters who were laboring, try to force that metal buck door to use the rabbit tool. Ladder 5 chauffeur raised the aerial to the roof. Ladder 5 forcible entry team would assume the second due position now because Ladder 8 is first due. Ladder 8 firefighter gained access via exposure 4, crossing over to get to over the roof to go from the adjoining building. Ladder 5 roof's firefighter gained access via the aerial ladder and crossing over to the fire building via front of the building. Ladder 5's OVM will be delayed getting to the rear because that's a tiller apparatus. The tiller man is actually the outside vent man. In a regular rear mount, the tiller man can dismount unless he's going to help the chauffeur set up, and he could go to do other duties. But with the tiller rig, he's got to set the rig up, so it takes a little time. So that tiller man, the outside vent man ladder fire was kind of delayed a little. Once the apparatus was in position, the OVM then used 66 watts, which is exposure two-way, mind you, to get to the back of the building. Excuse me, access to the rear of the building and access to the rear fire escape. At 1941, Battalion 2 arrived at the fire and assumed command. He heard a muffled transmission from Ladder 8's roof that the roof is open, the rear is clear, and there's smoke coming out of the scuttle. At 1942 hours, Ladder 5, Captain Drennan and his forcible entry team entered the building. Captain Drennan stopped and told the officer of Ladder 8 that they're going above the fire. Engine 5-5 now positioned their inch and three-quarter hose line near the fire apartment entrance. Excess hose was being flaked out in the street. Their hose was uncharged at the time. We're talking about now 1 hour and 17 minutes since the apartment occupant left the apartment with the garbage bag on top of the stove. Ladder 8's forcible entry team was able to force the apartment door. Initially, there was an outrush of heavy gray smoke, followed by a reversal of smoke into the apartment. The lieutenant of Ladder 8 attempted to enter the fire apartment to perform a primary search, but was driven back because of extreme heat. The Ladder 8 officer ordered the outside vent firefighter to vent the front windows of the fire apartment from the exterior. Battalion 2 transmitted using all hands, request additional engine and ladder company. At 1944 hours, Chief heard a muffled urgent over the handy-talkie. When he asked who gave the urgent, the reply was Ladder 5. The nozzle firefighter of engine 5-5 went to the front of the building to see what the delay was getting water. Firefighters from engine 7 and engine 24 flaked out excessive hose in front of the fire building, then returned to engine 5-5 apparatus to stretch the second line. Water was now flowing in the first hose line. Engine 5-5 firefighters prepared, to advance their hose line. Fire was now lapping out of the upper reaches of the first floor apartment door, up the interior stairs. The fire now had great intensity. The OVM from Ladder 8 took the front windows with a hook. About 5 seconds, a ball of fire erupted from the front windows and lasted for 10 to 15 seconds. Pete, put on photo number 2A. Two-A is the skylight on the third floor. That had wire glass on it. When this did their investigative report, they estimated the temperatures were well over 2,200 degrees because it takes close to 1,600 degrees or better to melt wire glass. Pete, 2B, please. I took a highlighter just to highlight the white, which is simulate the fire out that front window when they vented it. So it gives you an idea of the amount of energy that came out that front window. And photo number 2. That's the amount of fire coming out of the skylight on the roof. 10 to 15 feet above the height of the roof. So you think about the amount of energy that went up to that chimney I call the interior stair hallway. It just amazed me to see the amount of fire. But if you look at the conditions, it's like having a fire, a wood-burning stove fire, where the flames are in the flue. The very narrow hallway, the right conditions, the size, the amount of fuel, unburned fuel, the ventilation. You had the perfect storm to have that much energy being released in that small area. On the other hand, if you had a wider building where you had a wider hallway, the heater dissipated a little more into that hallway area. This was such a narrow hallway that it created this funnel for this energy to take complete, incinerate everything in its path going up.
Joe, we're going to take a moment to mention our friends at Key, which I do believe is the FDNY uses. They have their own proprietary type. It's not just theirs. You can select the FDNY Key. I believe it is their combat ready. But I wanted to give a shout out to Key. And like I say, don't go cheap on hose. As we can see in this fire, it's a lifeline. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay. Engine 5 nozzle firefighter, who was on his knees, was driven back by heavy fire coming out under pressure from the apartment door. He fell backwards. He saw orange all around him. A tremendous amount of fire now had possession of the apartment doorway and the first floor hallway. Engine 5 control firefighter had made it to the entrance of the first floor where he was donning his mask. And the amount of heat and energy coming out of the first floor banked down and drove him back out to the front entrance and stairwell. The fire came out of the first floor apartment with a loud roar. Engine nozzle firefighter operated a hose line from his back to try to cool the area down where he was in the hallway. He was able to recover and start operating the hose line through the apartment door. On the roof, ladder 5 roof, firefighter called for a saw to the roof because the flames burning through the skylight. The flames I mentioned before were 10 to 15 feet above the roof through the scuttle and skylight. The flames were coming from the first floor up the interior stairs and venting above the roof, 10 to 15 feet. The 1075 chief now was responding to this fire, Battalion 6. He could see the flames pushing above the roof blocks away. Ladder 5 chauffeur and Ladder 5's OV went to the rear of 64 watts to gain entrance to the rear. The saw was brought to the roof as requested. The outside vent ascended the rear fire escape of the fire building. He vented the rear windows on the first floor and the second floor, made entry into the second floor apartment. Engine 5 continued to fight the fire at the first floor apartment. Fire now was filling the entire stairwell from the first floor, second floor, third floor through the scuttle and the skylight. At 1947 hours, Engine 5 advanced their hose line up the stairway to the second floor. Engine 24 brought the second line to the fire apartment on the first floor and advanced into that apartment. The 1075 chief ordered the OVM of Ladder 8 to raise portable ladders and place them to the second floor window. The deputy chief of the 1st Division now arrived at the fire and was briefed by Battalion 6 of what transpired, including the urgent transmission was heard unable to clarify the message. At 1948 hours, Ladder 5's OVM climbed the rear fire escape and entered into the fire building. He made entry into the rear apartment, working towards the apartment door on the apartment side of the door. He noticed that the door was dented inward and fire was coming through the space between the door and the door jamb. It was later determined that Captain Drennan dented the door, trying to force it with his shoulder. The OVM used his Halligan to force the door open. It was dented inward. When he forced the door open, Captain Drennan fell into the apartment. Firefighter Seidenberg was lying next to his officer. The public hall was charged with thick black smoke. Ladder 5's OVM transmitted a Mayday message. DC Division ordered Battalion 6 to get to the second floor and find out what's going on. Engine 5 kept on advancing their line up the stairs, extinguishing fire on the second floor. As they advanced the hose line up the stairs, they found a severely burnt body. They communicated that to Battalion 6 as they were climbing the stairway. They were obstructed by the mattress and box spring that were being stored in the hallway. They kept moving up to the third floor. Battalion 6 made it to the second floor as engine 5-5 was advancing to the 3rd. Battalion 6 saw the severely burnt body on the 2nd floor, transmitted a 1045 code 1, which means deceased, fatality. It wasn't readily apparent who the victim was. Then it was determined it was a firefighter. It was firefighter Young. Battalion 6 called the Division 1 deputy and told him a firefighter fatality and 2 firefighters 1045 code severely injured. Interesting fact, firefighter Young, the only way they really knew was a firefighter was the tank. There was nothing left of him. At 1952 hours, Division 1 deputy transmitted a 2nd alarm. At 2003 hours, the 1st ambulance arrived, and then the 2nd ambulance a minute after. The fire was placed under control at 2020. All 3 members of the Ladder 5 forcible injury team were subjected to intense heat, products of combustion, direct contact for 6.5 minutes. The fire burned at a temperature over 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. The National Institute of Standards Technology was requested to investigate the fire. It was determined that the unusual fire behavior was a backdraft. Tightly enclosed occupancy with energy efficient windows contributed to the event. Also, the lowered ceiling contributed to the flashover phenomenon. The fire was burning for over an hour before it was detected. Once the apartment fire door was forced, the missing ingredients for the backdraft was air. There was no warning sign indicating a backdraft was possible. The fire came out at the firefighters with such velocity it overwhelmed the capacity of the first hose line. The fire came out of the 1st floor, racing up the stairs and venting the roof, extended approximately 50 feet. So we're figuring from the 1st floor through the roof, 50 feet of fire coming up through the chimney there of this interior stairs. I'm just going to make a couple of statements here before I go on, and I want to put on photo number 3B. That's 3A. It should be the next one, 3B after that, Pete.
Stand by a second, Joe.
Yeah, take your time.
Let me take a look. I gotta see if I can dig that one up, because that one might have been off.
That one would be the 2nd floor fire apartment hallway. Location of the deceased.
All right, stand by just a second here.
Yeah, it's probably identical to that, but it has the landing on it.
Let me see here. You guys just want to talk amongst yourselves for a minute.
What comes to my mind is Keokuk, Iowa. I know the circumstances are much different, but where they knew that they were going above a fire, there were children trapped, they were terribly, terribly understaffed, and they were caught in a hostile fire event, and I think it resulted in the fatality of 2 or 3 firefighters. Off the top of my head, I don't have anything in front of me here, but it's just another one of those classic operating above the fire. Joe, I got a question for you. So 5.5 engine advanced up above the fire, but I gather there was communication with the company that came in behind them to position at the fire apartment on the 1st floor. So there was some kind of coordination there.
Yeah, there was. What happened here? That fire had completely consumed the hallway. So that, as 5.5's moving in, the 2nd line is all charged and ready to go. So now they're holding it back at bay into the fire apartment, but now they're going up the stairs. So they're knocking down the stairs, and 24 engine is following right behind them into the fire apartment to knock down. If you look at the size of the room there, I'm sure everybody could tell you, you open the line up a couple of shots, you put this thing out.
Yeah.
The interesting thing here is the amount of energy that was initially released from that fire area. It's mind-boggling. And if I have time, I'll share another story with my own personal experience. But Pete, if you can't find that,
I got it.
Okay, if you look at this picture, they numbered where the location of the firefighters were 1, 2, and 3. Fireman Young was right on the base of those stairs going up from the first floor up, and Seidenberg and Captain Drennan were right there. I mentioned before when they opened the door, the captain fell in. The firefighter Seidenberg was right behind him. The next photo I have is number 2. I guess photo number 2. I
Stand by a second.
No problem. Anyway,
Bill, that was 3 firefighters and 3 children died in Iowa.
well,
Well, Clark, there are some similarities. I mean, for some, what do you recall? You're a student of the fire service. Are you familiar with what happened there?
No, not really, Bill.
Okay, I know that they were terribly, terribly understaffed. And 3 firefighters and 3 children. Yeah, it's I highly recommend that all of us students of the fire service, Keokuk, Iowa is a landmark event and a teaching moment that we all should be familiar with. So, but that just comes to mind there, Clark.
And like we said before the program, Bill, all these, I mean, the work that Underwriter Laboratories is doing and the work that NIST is doing, these fire dynamics research studies, they are unbelievable. Every single one of these fires, you can learn so much from just at the kitchen table, throwing the video up, and we can be learning so much information. It is a great time to be a firefighter in the United States with all the technology and all the work being done. It's a firefighting renaissance. And it's very, very easy. It is very easy to get this information. And we're doing ourselves a disservice as officers if we are not sitting at the kitchen table instead of watching whatever stuff we watch to put a couple of these videos on.
Oh, but the ironic thing is we're all veterans, but we're all students.
Absolutely.
We're all eager to learn. Joe's retired.
What I find interesting, Bill, when you first come on the job, fire dynamics wasn't out there. And Dan Malinowski came to the division of training, and Chief Galvin was the chief at the time. I asked if I could sit in it, and I became friends with Dan. I sent him emails from time to time. Just unbelievable. It's just what I learned about fire dynamics is you think you know everything about fire, and you really don't. And nowadays, why is it different? The amount of fuel contents within the apartment is off the chart. And then you compound with a wind-driven fire. Years ago, you forced the door, like the other fellow I mentioned, you pulled it off the hinges. The only thing we have in our toolbox today is controlling ventilation. And once you lose control of that fire apartment door, it's all over. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. I have these life-threatening issues I wanted to read. Losing control of the fire department door, this was the main issue here. The door didn't have a self-closing device. The steel butt door, when I came on a job, the first thing I was taught, take your glove off and feel the door. I don't think we do that today. And I could share to you why. Years ago, you had these old canvas gloves, you pull them off, you put your hand on the door. Nowadays, you're buttoned up, you got the sleeves, the gloves. The gloves are difficult to take off. So I think that trait is kind of being lost, because if you put your hand on a steel butt door and it's real hot behind it, it's telling you something when you open that door up. So just the point I wanted to bring out.
Hey, Joe, real quick, for all of us young guys who are listening, what is a steel butt door, please?
Oh, what it is, it's a fire rated door that has a rating. I think the rating is 2 hours or 3 hours. So it's a steel door that's insulated, and it's completely in a steel frame buck. So it's a metal door. It's a very difficult door to force. And then they Mortise it with 2 or 3 Mortise locks. Or in a high security place, you might find a fox lock, which goes into the buck. Or you might find a police lock. So conventional forcible entry is a chore. So even with regular Halligan, if you have 3 locks, let's say 8 inches apart, you can't even pry that door with the adze. Try to get in the fork in the door to force it. It's a chore. So the rabbit tool is a phenomenal tool, but what you had mentioned before, when technology makes things better, sometimes it counterreacts something else. And I'll tell you what it counterreacts. Now I can force that door much faster before that line comes to the door. By the time you were regular forcing the door conventionally, the line was by the door ready to go in. Now I can force that door 1, 2, 3. So with that in mind, that's a good thing, but yet it could be a bad thing, because I don't care what anybody says. Water is there for one reason, to protect us.
Joe,
And
that is an absolute spot on teachable point. And it's something that we need to include this. I'm talking to my friend Matt now. We have a mechanical device. We call it the door storm. It works very well with us, very rugged, heavy but rugged. And Matt, before we issue those tools, you're absolutely spot on. What would take several minutes with conventional forcible entry is now taking a few seconds.
Yeah.
And we have to be much careful with our timing and door control. And I think that's a real good point to bring up here.
What they did, I'm going to read what recommendations came from this fire. But one of the recommendations was to have a piece of rope or a hose track with the rabbit tool. Because what happens with the rabbit tool, it's a porta pack. As you're putting hydraulic pressure on it, that door could fly right open. So now you put a hook with either a hose strap or a piece of rope on it. Somebody's holding that taut. As you're pulling it, you're not going to let the door fall open. But like I said, you learn from these experiences, and it's just amazing. You know, like I mentioned before about technology. Technology is good, but we talk about the electric cars, the problems we're going to face down the road with them. But when technology changes, the fire service is the last one to find out about it. No, I'm sorry, the first one to find out about it. But it's the reality of what happens in technology. I'm going to read you the aftermath, okay? The next day after this fire, the mayor notified the fire commission the city is going to purchase bunker gear. This is pre-bunker gear. I can't tell you the burn injuries in my job, including myself, from rubber boots. Just one burn I had on my knee was just kneeling on a hot marble floor, moving in with the line. I felt a sizzle, a second-degree burn about the size of a silver dollar on my knee. Years ago, they used to the old timers used to sew potholders on their boots. Anyway, the responsive firefighter assist team, the fast team, now it goes on a 1075, because what they figured happened is when a problem is going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong right away in the initial response of firefighters. So you want that fast assist team right there. So fast team goes on 1075. It was prior on the all hands. Review and revisions, okay, address coordination between units operating above the fire. We always told the first due truck or the officer or fireman, the door fireman, I'm going above the fire. It was like clockwork. Now we came down with who are we going to tell? Responsibility, second due engine officer, second due engine control person who's on that landing. Hey, this is ladder so-so, we're going above the fire. Amended training bulletins with the rabbit tool, which I mentioned before. A piece of rope and hose strap was put into that to carry with that tool. Review and amend the manual of fire communications to describe better what a Mayday and urgent message is. There's 5 messages on a Mayday, and it's all life-threatening. Whether it's a collapse imminent, a firefighter's falling off a building, firefighter trapped, that's a Mayday. There's 2 other ones. The other one with an urgent is fires extending into the exposure. So they rewrote the whole bulletin on definition of urgent and Mayday. Begin an immediate program to introduce strict discipline on fire and emergencies. With the radio now, they have a signal where they can push an emergency button, that somebody's pushing that button, where supposedly all communication will cease, and they can take a roll call to find out where that's coming from. Immediate program, develop a distinct audible signal for that emergency progress. All routine handy-talkie be maintained to determine the cause of that alert. The BF4, we have a writing list. The writing list lists everybody who's riding that tour. Sometimes it changes during the night. Somebody goes sick, you get a detail in. they can't emphasize more of upgrading that riding list, because now something happens, that riding list, a copy of it's in the apparatus. So let's say 5 firefighters are in the building and it's in a collapse. They're going to go to the apparatus. And if that hasn't been updated, it's not accurate information on that BF4. Conduct research type building syndrome, and that was with NIST, energy efficient windows in conjunction with information from NIST and UL. And today, conditions present in a fire department conducive for violent flashover or backdrift. And Dan had said this many times, the amount of fuel we have in today's compartment is off the charts. So now you have tremendous amount of fuel, you have fire reaching temperatures that we've never seen before. And you say to yourself, okay, how do we protect firefighters? Well, we got to control that ventilation. I mentioned before to Bill, the days of breaking a window and going in doing a search, they're gone. It's so, and here's another thing. And I spoke with this chief there in the 3rd Battalion once, and he had something interesting to say, and I agree with him 100%. Years ago, when we had the mushroom effect in tenements, the roof was all pre-vented, okay? Because the door would be forced, all the products would go up and vent through the roof. But let's think about it today. Does roof ventilation have to be communicated? Absolutely. Let's say I get to the fire floor, and I can't tell you how many times I experienced this. The fire department door is open. This thing's racing out in the hallway. Do you want them to have that roof? Absolutely not, because you're going to pull us right up the stairs. You got to get that door closed. You got to control that door. You might not be able to control that door. So wait for the engine to come up, start pushing this back in. Once you get the door control, communicate that roof ventilation. But prior roof ventilation, when it's out in the hallway, this thing's going right to the roof. You're going to pull it right up to the roof. And never really dawned on me until we discussed it, because this fire, you can think about it, vented the skylight, vented the roof, what we do in standard operating procedure, but didn't have control of that door. Pull this thing right up, right through the skylight. So just a couple of points. The other thing I wanted to share with you, I had one incident of a wood frame building. I was working an overtime tour in engine 50. We're coming up over the hill, comes by 82 engine, 2:30 in the morning. You see the glow in the sky. So we've got a working fire. So we get there, engine 82's got their line on the first floor. It's a 2-story frame. She tells me stretch to the 2nd floor. So we stretch, we get up to the 2nd floor. Lights are out, a lot of heat. Fire department door, we start moving in. It's getting hot as hell. Nozzle man opens the nozzle. I'm looking, what are you doing? What are you hitting? It's hot, it's hot. He's opening up. I didn't hear the line underneath me, okay? Number one. Number two is the linoleum floor was soft. Weird. I didn't like what I was feeling and what I was not seeing. I said to him, back out, shut down, let's get out of here. I start down the stairs. Now he's not behind me. And I go, oh man, what is he doing? So I go back up. He got disorientated because he went straight down the hallway. He missed the stairs. That's how bad it was. I grab him. We get down the stairs. We no sooner get to the half landing, the whole 2nd floor lights up like a bowling ball, completely lights up. What happened was, number one, my radio got turned off. That was a big mistake. Number two, they took the 1st floor apartment, they put a wall in. The fire was in the rear. You had to go to the rear to come in and get the fire. They're coming through the front door. They have a lot of heat, a lot of smoke, no fire. So no water was being put on the fire. That's why I didn't hear the line operating underneath me. But it was one of these instances where somebody was looking out for me. And God's honest truth. It really was a rude awakening. But this telltale signs, and I always say going on the floor above, my first priority is getting an adjacent place of egress, the opposite door from above, number one. Number two is I communicate with that 1st floor, 1st truck, location of the fire. Where's the fire located? It's in the kitchen, it's in the rear, it's on the 2 side, it's on the 4th side, it's in the 3 side. I want to know the location of the fire. My job on the floor above is nothing more than a recon position. I'm going up there to check for life, check for the fire. There's no line up there yet. So I'm not going to be hanging out in this apartment. I'm going to do that recon, get out. Fire's extending to the wall in the kitchen. I'm going to repeat that information. I want that line up there. I'm not going to stay in that apartment. I got that area of refuge that I force. God forbid they lose water on that first floor, I have somewhere to go. And then most importantly, cognizant of that first due engine. Are they making headway? Or did they lose water? It's something you don't deviate from that. And that's from people teaching me, and that's from myself going to fires, where I have a routine that I don't deviate from that routine. But getting back with the floor above, it's what Bill had said, it's probably the most dangerous position a truck officer could be in, especially when that line is not in position on the fire floor. Because we do this routinely. The line's being stretched. Now we force that front door very fast. The truck gets in. There's still no water getting into that fire department. I'm going above. It's the speed now. It's great, but yet we're missing that one ingredient: the protection of a hose line, and you can never forget that. I always want to be cognizant of that line and how the fire's advancing. And like I said, we're in probably the most dangerous profession in the world, and it changes constantly. It's not consistent. Fires are not routine. Like mentioned before, you think you're going to a fire. I've been to this type of fire 30 times. Now you get complacent because you're thinking, well, I've been to this 20, 30 times. No, I've been to it 20, 30 times, but I'm going to keep my eyes out. I'm not going to let my guard down. The other interesting thing about the floor above, I want to find the fire. I don't want the fire to find me. That's just what I had.
I wrote a safety bulletin, Joe Clark, and the guys on the job, they think, wow, the crazy old captain, he lost his marbles. The title of the safety bulletin was Caught in the Flow Path, Fighting a Basement Fire on the 4th Floor. So what we have duplex apartments, Joe, 5-story building. First floor, 1-story apartment. Second floor, 2-story apartments. Living room, second floor, living room, dining room, kitchen. Go up the stairs to the bedroom. Okay. Then there's no hallway on the 4th floor. No hallway. 5th floor, you enter your 5th floor apartment, and when you want to go to the bedroom, you go down the stairs.
Oh, wow.
God forbid those windows break, those windows fail, and I'm on that stairway going down. And before Daryl had to leave, but this was a huge issue. Keokuk, Iowa, you definitely, if you've never looked into it, look into it. The other is the Hillside Fire in San Francisco, California, where they lost 2 firefighters.
Well, you alluded to working above a fire, and you talked about the San Francisco hillside. That
Yeah.
fire was called Berkeley Way.
Yes.
It killed 2 firefighters
Engine
on a building that
26.
was damn near nothing showing on arrival. Damn near nothing. A haze of smoke, even from pictures of from across the way. And this thing basically, exploded in fire. And prior to that event, this is one of San Francisco's slowest firehouses.
26, right?
I believe that's the company number, but I wouldn't be quoted on that right now. But they lost another member years before, maybe 20 years earlier, a lieutenant named Membretti, also in a hillside home, and also wind driven, and that the garage door closed on him and his crew. Anyway, over this time, Oakland's got a shitload of those type of hillside houses. I mean, we've got way more than the city. And I hear a lot of keyboard warriors say things like, you got to go down the side and go on the side entrance and all that. I get it. Sometimes that's an option, but I'll tell you what, that is basically not an option in thousands of those homes. They're chiseling these houses into steep hillsides. You're parking on the 4th floor. You have 3 stories down. And unless you're going to rappel, there's not always a staircase. And then the thing is surrounded by eucalyptus trees, and the neighbors are right next there. And you'll just have a conflagration if you just let this thing go. So I don't know if a lot of people in the country understand those challenges when they're typing on the keyboard, but at times that's the only option really, is to try to get in and locate and confine. And more, you know, it works out a lot. And sometimes in this case, it did not, but you know, people need to know that these firefighters are all dealing with unique challenges to their specific area.
You think a Bresnan distributor or distributor nozzle, rotating spinning nozzle, inserted through the floor would be effective for that kind of fire?
I would say, I mean, only if you were able to confine it to that room and you were not going to be able to have any opportunity for that fire to leave the room and get out into the hallway and the staircase, because then you have no way to isolate yourself up there.
So it, you know, it doesn't have to be, we could talk, and we've talked a lot about basements, but anytime that we operate above a fire, Joe, I don't know if it's just me, but in your experience, have you ever had a fire or know somebody that's been to a fire where you got a grocery market or barber shop or something on the first floor, mercantile, commercial, and at night, all the shutters are down, all the roll down gates are down, American 2000 locks, everything's locked up. So naturally, if there's a fire, it's going to be reported by the occupant of an apartment on the second floor. And stupid me, I allowed a civilian to do my size up. And we took a line upstairs without checking the store. And Chief Stevens, God rest his soul, had the presence of mind to get that store examined. And sure enough, that's where the fire was. But I allowed a civilian to do my size up for me. And we were drawn just like a moth to the second floor when the fire was underneath us in the commercial occupancy that we didn't know because it was all shuttered.
Bill, you know what it is? We all, it's not making mistakes. It's all we learned from this job. I had two cops telling me there was a man trapped inside of a bodega. They had him in security. They forced the door, fire's in the back. I crawled in looking for this guy. There was nobody in there. So it's today, you know, people will tell you things, and I try not to tunnel vision anything. I just try to analyze things. But when you have these two cops, they were just a bunch of morons. For them to tell me somebody's in there, I'm speaking to him. Why would I crawl in a commercial with no line? And I wound up in Jacoby Hospital. I had heat stroke. I collapsed when I got outside. I wanted to bring charges, and I was told not to. I was livid, you know. But anyway, I had a fireman passed away, Bobby Blair. And Bobby Blair used to say, you make that determination. Don't let anybody make it for you. People reported trapped. Dispatcher's reporting this. He's getting information from a civilian. You make that determination. Don't tunnel vision and go that what he just told you over the years gospel, because that's how you're going to get yourself into trouble. And that's just learning experience. Like I'm guilty of that myself, Bill.
There's another great fire out of California. It was called Stilt Court, California. I don't know. I can't remember what city it was in, but they had a kitchen fire that was ventilation controlled. Fire department shows up. There was an upstairs window that was open. Fire department shows up, have smoke from the upstairs window, open up the front door. Well, it was a smoldering fire in the kitchen. Fire department takes the line right up the stairs on the second floor now, searching for the fire. Can't find it, getting hotter. They say it's time to go. Yeah, probably Sacramento. I think you're right, Pete. Time to go. They turn around to go, and the fire is blowing up the stairwell now. Well, when they opened the front door, that created that flow path up the stairs and out of that window. And the captain got burned up. I can't remember his name right now, but just a residential house, right? Not even a commercial, 2,400 square foot house. And that changed the way I do business. That changed. Anytime we go first floor, I hold the company at the bottom of the stairs, I say, just let me take a look at the kitchen. And I just give me a real quick sweep on the first floor, make sure there's nothing on the first floor before we go up those stairs.
And then Washington DC, where I'm going to be speaking next week at Andy Frederick's training days in Alexandria. The Cherry Road, we discussed the Cherry Road. I don't know if that's why DC checks the basement. I mean, is it conceivable that you could have a fire in the basement of a building and on the 4th floor? Yes, with a bus duct? Sure, you could. Sure, you could have an electrical panel in the basement on fire, and the fire could travel us up the bus duct and rear its ugly head in a meter room. So, Clark, I think we've got, and Joe, you're still with us.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Next month, we're going to have Jack Murphy on. This lithium ion battery situation in New York and to a lesser extent other cities is out of frigging control. It is out of control. It's crazy. Yeah, and so Jack has got a lot of experience with this. He also has been working with FDNY has been doing a lot of research. So, and Joe, and I know that you have done some research. So I want to thank our friends at Key Hose. And I'll never forget, I have a slide. Searching without the protection of a hose line will become a tactic of the past by Joe Barry. That's before I ever knew you, but I have that slide. I have that slide in my presentations. And it's like, hey, fire's not going to take a time out while we search, not in a petrochemical environment. So guys,
you learn the hard way. I used to try to follow the line out, and it's loop going in one room, loop going in the other room. And when you got an exit stage left, you want the shortest distance between 2 points. So you stretch that search line.
yeah.
Hey, Joe, I got to tell you, the listening here to you, the passion that you have when you talk about the fire and fire department and everything is absolutely incredible. That passion you have, and your wife's never going to be able to tame that. It's just
she didn't come home yet.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. That
I thank
such
you.
passion.
I do. I'm in this to life.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that comment.
Our viewers, I think I can speak on behalf of all of our viewers and Clark and Matt when I say, Joe, thank you so very much. You'll never know, we'll never know that there's some firefighter that's watching this right now or will watch the archived version later. It's going to have their life saved because of the lessons that you talked about today in this hangout. And I feel very, very fortunate to be your student and your friend, Joe. So we're going to say goodbye until next month. Bill Gustin, Matt Livingstone, Joe Barry, and Clark Lamping. Till next month, God bless and stay safe.
Thank you so much.